From having to flee his country as a mere baby to ruling over everyone's hearts as Joel in The Last of Us, let's take a look at the rise and fall of Pedro Pascal. Pedro was born in Santiago on April 2, 1975, to a child psychologist, Veronica Pascal, and a fertility doctor, Jose Balmacheda. His parents had to go into hiding due to Pinochet's dictatorship. They left a young Pedro and his sister with their aunt while they sought asylum at the Venezuelan embassy. Eventually, the entire family made its way to the U.S. They started out in Texas before eventually settling in California. His parents would take him and his siblings to the cinema to soak up American culture. Pedro remembers facing bullying in school, so he turned to plays and classic movies to cope with the loneliness. After high school, he pursued his acting dreams at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts. Life threw a curveball at him when his mother tragically took her own life in 1999. According to Pedro, that was the hardest thing he ever had to go through. Pedro always emphasizes how much his mom meant to him, how supportive she was, and how none of his success would be real without her. To honor her memory, he adopted her maiden name as his stage name, Pedro Pascal. With that name, he's made waves worldwide. It all started with Good vs. Evil. Although he had previously worked in a few short films, this TV appearance marked a major step forward for him in his career. Not because the role was massive, but because he had finally gotten his foot through the door. He needed that stepping stone to make his way through bigger and better roles. Pedro realized that Hollywood was full of opportunities, but only for those who were willing to put in the work. That's exactly what he did. He kept applying for casting calls, just waiting for that one lucky break. In one of those crazy twists of fate, Pascal landed a role in an iconic TV series. Not just any series, it was the legendary Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He played an awkward freshman named Edward at Sunnydale College. His character crosses paths with none other than Buffy Summers. But hold on to your stakes, because things take a dark turn for poor Edward. He gets kidnapped by a vampire gang led by a vampire named Sunday. Next thing you know, Edward is all vamped up and ready to bite some necks. Here's where Pedro's acting chops shine through. He brilliantly portrays this transformed vampire version of Edward. The guy goes from an awkward freshman to a blood-sucking creature of the night. Since we're already talking 1999 here, Pedro was already showing off his exceptional talent way back then. To top it all off, he was killed off the show shortly after all of this went down, so he had to act out every possible scenario he could in a very short amount of time. And well, he killed it. But when I say that man's got range, I mean it. He went on to star in shows like The Good Wife. It was his first taste of being a regular on a hit TV series, and he played an adversarial assistant state attorney named Nathan Landry. Nathan's mission? To keep the main lead, Alicia's disgraced husband, behind bars. Can you imagine going head-to-head with Alicia Florrick? That's some serious legal showdown stuff right there. Pedro loved working on the show and kept watching it long after his time there. That's a true fan right there, folks. But that's where the man really started to gain traction. With that, he landed a role in Narcos. He took on the lead role of Javier Pena, a drug enforcement agent. Narcos is all about real-life efforts to bring down the infamous Colombian drug lord, Pablo Escobar. Javier is someone deeply dedicated to his mission, even at the expense of his personal life. Even though Narcos may not have skyrocketed to the same level of fame as some other drug lord-inspired shows, Pascal's portrayal of Javier Pena was a standout. People absolutely fell in love with him. Even though Javier only blessed everyone's screens for 30 episodes, it was enough to prove to everyone that Pedro knows how to hold the audience's attention. And that's exactly what he did with his role in Game of Thrones. In the show's 4th season, Pascal stepped into the shoes of Oberyn, a member of House Martell and one of the great houses of Westeros. And he nailed it. Pascal brilliantly captured the charisma and brains of this fan-favorite character. Oberyn was sharp-witted, charming, and had some serious combat skills. Pascal's portrayal brought those qualities to life with style and insane finesse. He managed to embody everything, from Oberyn's heartbreaking past to his incredible sarcasm and wit that would just surprise everyone. Frankly, it was a treat to watch. Of course, we can't talk about Oberyn Martell without mentioning that scene. You know the one I'm talking about. Oberyn's shocking death scene. It was a moment that left viewers everywhere with their jaws on the floor. In a show known for its shocking twists and turns, for a death scene to stand out, you know it has to be iconic. Pascal delivered a performance that none of us can ever forget. This was the point where the world was swooning over Pedro Pascal, and it seemed like from that point on, you'd see them everywhere. But somehow that didn't end up happening. For the better part of a decade, Pedro Pascal was nowhere to be seen. In a way, it seemed like Pascal had reached his peak, and that everything that came after that would pale in comparison. That is, if he ever got cast again. The entertainment industry can be unpredictable, and there are lots of reasons why actors might drop off the map right after a massive role. But Pedro wasn't working on anything remotely like his earlier successes. While everyone began thinking that Pedro's career was over, the helmet came off in The Mandalorian. 8 years after Oberyn had his eyes smashed in, it was revealed that Din Djarin was none other than Pedro Pascal himself. What was different about this role was the fact that audiences got to love Din Djarin well before we actually got to see his face. So the audience's reaction to seeing the familiar face again really made him an overnight sensation. Plus, the way he managed taking care of Grogu just took up space in everyone's hearts that we didn't even know we had. But even a character that's very loved can be hard to play. That's because his face is mostly concealed by a helmet throughout the series. This meant that he had to rely solely on his voice and body language to immerse viewers in the story, and he did so with remarkable skill. Additionally, Din Djarin's character is naturally reserved and composed, making the role a unique opportunity for Pascal as well. Despite the limitations imposed by the helmet, he managed to bring depth, emotion, and authenticity to his performance. Audiences worldwide were superfans at the dynamic between Grogu and Mando, and the role brought Pascal's career right back to where it was with Oberyn, and then some. But no one was prepared for the impact that man made with Joel. While Disney produces top-notch content, HBO is in a league of its own. Pascal has landed the lead role in the highly anticipated video game adaptation of The Last of Us, playing Joel, a hardened and often ruthless father who tragically lost his daughter during the onset of a zombie apocalypse. 2 decades later, he embarks on a perilous journey across the post-apocalyptic United States safeguarding Ellie, a teenage girl immune to the infection, brilliantly played by Bella Ramsey. Both of the lead actors had a history of making it big with Game of Thrones and were coming back for something even they didn't anticipate would get as big as it truly did. Right after the first episode aired, it was obvious that no one could have played Joel better. The heart he brought to the character just took things to the next level. For what might just be the first time in history, people started liking a character's TV show adaptation more than the video game version. With that, Pedro Pascal's career has reached new levels of success. The man's everywhere. You can't scroll the internet without at least seeing him eating a sandwich or seeing a video of him saying he's a daddy 100 times in a row. When you reach meme level, you know you've reached the ultimate worldwide success. So, from ruling over everyone's hearts as Joel to having to flee his country as a mere baby, that's all for the rise and fall and rise again of Pedro Pascal.